Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Reverend Annie Mertz, and I am the rector here at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, and we are so grateful to have you here with us today. Before we begin our service, I'd like to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, now is a great time to silence any noise-making devices you might have. Also wanted to let you know that the restrooms, should you need them, are going to be out the back door and in the next building on your left, that way, on J Street. And the bathrooms are in the far back corner there, so that's where they are. And lastly, I'd just like to invite you to take a moment to settle yourself into a different kind of space. You came through the door into this place, and we are entering a different kind of time, a different kind of being. So whatever that looks like or feels like to you, I invite that for you now. We're going to begin with a series of remembrances that will be given by the speakers listed in your bulletin. If you are one of those speakers, just know that you'll be speaking from that lectern right there, and don't be shy about bringing the microphone down so we can hear you. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and invite Rita to come forward and share your remembrance.
Testing. Can you hear me? Okay. David Chamberlain, the early years. Well, not the very early years. I first met David when he was a freshman at Folsom High School in Folsom, California. I was a senior that year. And normally seniors and freshmen aren't together very much. But David was best friends with my downstairs neighbor, Garth Groff. And they were both in the combined all classes advanced placement English class. And one of the things that they would do after we became friends is during the weekly joint discussions of whatever was being discussed that week, if I was having trouble getting into the discussion, they would wave their hands and say, "Be quiet, Rita wants to say something," which of course made me go, cringe. We were all part of what was our self-proclaimed out crowd. The misfits, the nerds, the band members, the drama club, the Future Teachers of America, the library club, I think that was it. Library club, drama club, yeah. And, we knew we weren't the in crowd with the cheerleaders and the quarterbacks and the student body president and so forth. So we decided together that we were the out crowd. And when we weren't in school, we would hang out at each other's houses or walk the streets of the very quiet town of Folsom at that time. We'd walk up to Folsom Lake sometimes on nice days, or we'd walk the whole length of town down to Folsom Boulevard, where one of our members lived in a trailer house at the trailer park. And there was also a big pile of gravel by the railroad, and some nights we would climb up to the top of that and listen to the rocket testings, because we could hear the rockets at Aerojet, the Apollo space program, being tested with a big roar from across the river. And we would get just wild and crazy on Lucky's generic soda pop, our drug of choice, and just had a great time together. Well, then, of course, I graduated since I was a senior, and I think it was the following year or the next that David's family moved to Las Vegas. We stayed in touch by letter, and actually one visit when his family happened to be in Los Angeles at the same time I was visiting my grandmother, and we got together. He wrote and told me that, to his great joy, that the Las Vegas school offered more languages than he was going to be able to study Russian. I think Folsom only had Spanish and French. As I say, we were a small school. And then, as I say, we kept in touch by letters. Eventually he went off to college in Michigan for a 3-year bachelor program, and then a 1-year intensive in Japanese at Cornell, and then into the Navy, where he was sent to the Language Institute in Monterey, and then off to northern Japan, and I would get letters. Some of them with messages in Elven script, because one of the things the out crowd discovered very early was the Evil Ace edition of the Lord of the Rings, and we passed it around, and everybody read it, and David taught himself Elvish script. I think a few others did too. And the most striking thing is that as the years went by, we discovered that outcrowd wasn't the right name for us at all, that a number of us, including David and some of the others, were in fact very much in the closet, which of course was the times we were growing up in. And of course, once David was in the military, that was a necessity because of the policies of the day. But we gradually, those of us who kept in communication, found out that we had partners not expected when we were in high school. And of course, even in that day, there were some people you go like, yeah, not surprised. And others that you go like, really? Oh, that explains, And so I really didn't learn that David was gay until he'd come out of the Navy. And then when he and David met, our mutual friend Paula, who was also a senior when I was, did their commitment ceremony, which was lovely. And after that, I kind of lost touch because I was moving back and forth, and we weren't writing letters as much. And then I got the very sad news on Facebook that he was very ill. So, and I had all of those regrets that you have when you've lost touch with someone until it's too late. Thank you.
Joe, please come forward.
Unlike Rita, can you hear me back there? I've never been accused of being too quiet. Unlike Rita, I have to be prepared for this because I'm not sure how I'm going to hold up here. So, well, good afternoon. My name is Joe Spear, and for 46 years, David was one of the most important people in my life. He's not just a friend, but he was a brother I never had. David and I first met in October of 1979 when I was 20 years old, serving on a fast attack submarine, the USS Flying Fish out of Norfolk, Virginia. David reported with his detachment of intel and communication members, and he was the officer in charge of that cadre that would be with me and the rest of the crew of that submarine for the next 72 days. And in that 72 days, David and I worked side by side in a space about half the size of the pew you're sitting in. And we quickly became, and it was a place where you quickly learn who people really are. And what I learned about Dave in those 72 days stayed true for me for the next 4+ decades. He's a natural leader, He was calm under pressure, and there was plenty of pressure. Super smart, and someone you could trust with anything. But what stands out most to me, is not the mission itself, not the long hours and the never-ending demands placed on both of us. It was the moment that I realized that David, a leader I respected as a young sailor and him as a young officer, was becoming a friend that always would be there. David continued to be part of my life long after that mission in the fall of 1979. Our paths would cross multiple times throughout the next 20 years of our Navy careers. And once we settled into our non-military lives. Along the way, I met my wife, Karen, and she came to love him as much as I did. Our two sons saw him not just as Dad's friend, but as an uncle. Then David met David. And what was just David now became the two Daves. And for the next 3 decades, our constant was Dave and Dave. Two people who loved each other, who loved us, who we admired, and who were part of our family until that very sad day in February. I'm grateful for every year we had, for the laughter, the stories, the long talks, the shared history that only David and I understood. I'm grateful I got to walk through so much of my life with him by my side. David leaves behind a legacy of loyalty, of kindness, intelligence, and most of all, love. He leaves behind people who will carry him forward into the way we live, the way we treat each other, and the way we show up for those we love. I will miss you, David Chamberlain. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Hatt. I'm known as a D3. I've known this David since 1987. I met David Chamberlain in 1988. And 97. When? 97? Yes. Okay, 97. I don't let facts change a good story. So anyway, this is my boyfriend, David Chamberlain, and this guy with long ponytail, which wasn't a human hair color, with a handlebar mustache. Oh, nice to meet you. And he says, and David says he was like retired Navy. I was in the Navy. Oh, really? Where were you stationed? I was stationed in Japan. I was stationed in Japan. I was there from 84 to 86. I was there from 84 to 86. Oh my God, we knew the same people. He was stationed, I was stationed on a ship. He was stationed, it was at the mountainside, it was called a cave. And this is where the US had its sensitive intelligence operations in it. And so we knew the same friends, and but we never met each other. And this is at Yokosuka Naval Base. Anyway, so David and I, we talked the whole night long, and poor David Rounsley probably felt left out of the conversation. Ever since then, the three of us have been friends. And so back to the Daves. So this is years ago. We're starting exchanging Christmas cards, and I was writing 100 Christmas cards. Return address, their address, and a sentiment inside. Finally, after 100 cards, enough of this. Mr. David B. Rounsley and Mr. David L. Chamberlain. Enough. I said the Daves, and that name stuck. And so he's D1, David Chamberlain is D2, I'm D3, and David Sokol is D4. All right, so that's the history of the Ds. Over the years, we've had many dinners together, either at their home in San Carlos, or at my home, or at a restaurant. We had many things in common: international politics, enjoying good food, enjoying wine, and being involved with our family lives. This morning, I have a guest book, so when people come to my home, they sign it. And I was looking through it, and every other page had their names right there. So they're at my home a lot, and I deeply appreciate it because they're part of my family. One of the travel things, well, December 2001, they gave me all their French francs because January 2002, Euro switched and francs were going to be illegal, so I got all their French francs. I was also honored to be at their commitment ceremony on April the 4th, 2001. And later on, I was honored to be at their marriage ceremony at the San Mateo County Courthouse, 2008. All right. I was happy that they moved to Trillium. They had a much bigger space for their at-home holiday celebrations. And I was at all of them from 1989 when they first started until last year. In 2014, they made their decision to move to Benicia. I was happy for them. They moved to an even grander home and had even grander parties. Even though Benicia was an hour drive away from me, we didn't see each other as much as we used to. But we still had made a point to meet in person at least 3 times a year, and it was wonderful. In 2019, Beach Blanket Babylon was closing, so we got tickets to the 2 shows, the regular show and to the Christmas show, and it was closing December 31, 2019. Our seats were so close, our knees were touching the stage. It was wonderful. In the summer of 2025, we met in the city, and Dave was not one to complain about himself or complain about aches and pains, but this time he sort of did. He was wincing. He mentioned about his physical pain, and he was working through it. And we both dismissed it, like me, like lose weight, do some exercise, yeah. But at his last at home in last year, I didn't notice anything different about Dave. But I talked to David Rounsley, and he said, he was not in the top of his game. He was in pain, but David masked it pretty well. Eventually, early 26, David was admitted to the hospital. My first visit, he was sort of out of it. On a second visit I went, all of a sudden Dave and I were in the room, and he says, well, we all knew this day was coming. I will be going. You can come with me. And it was just shocking to me because it sounded like he was marshaling his troops together, but it was also him being a leader, leading himself into his own destiny. What a legacy that is for me. He died a few days later. The quality I admire in David is that his keen insight into business, his sardonic wit, his devotion to his family and friends. If you were his friend, you were his friend for life. I was very lucky to be one of his friends. One of the many qualities I love and admire about David is his unconditional love for his husband, David Rounsley. He did all his best to spare him from pain and stress. He did what he could. It's a giant legacy that Dave leaves for me. I will miss him.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Sockel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Sockel, and this is my wife, Juliana. We were lucky enough to know David Chamberlain and David Rounsley for more than 26 years. I first met Dave Chamberlain at Providian Financial. I had just finished giving a presentation, and he walked up to me afterwards and introduced himself. That one conversation turned into one of the most important friendships of our lives. Honestly, Dave made an immediate impression on me. At the time, as sure as you all know, he had this incredible curly mustache, and unlike most things from the late 90s, he never gave it up. It became completely iconic. And if you knew Dave, you probably could picture that mustache perfectly, right now. A few weeks later, maybe a little longer, Juliana and I met David Rounsley. And from that point forward, the four of us became incredibly close. And before long, our lives were deeply intertwined. Somewhere along the way, somehow we became this extended family of the Davids. David Chamberlain and David Rounsley, of course, D1 and D2, but honestly, I never knew until today which one was which. They were inseparable, so it just made sense, D1, D2, and of course, Dave had, as he mentioned, was D3, and I was honored to be given D4. So I don't know, is there a D5? There is a D5. And he's here too. Professionally, Dave was one of the most talented people I've ever known. He was brilliant technically, but what made him truly special was how he treated people. Customers didn't just respect him, they loved him. Companies like PG&E, Visa, Aerojet Rocketdyne, New Mexico Mutual, people would literally ask for him by name, and if not by name, by curly mustache. I trusted him so much that I eventually asked him to lead my entire team at Aerojet Rocketdyne. And everyone at Imagine Security, where we worked, loved Dave too. He was always the life of the party, bringing joy, quirky jokes, laughter, and this energy that instantly made every room better the moment he walked right into it. And no matter how smart or accomplished he was, he never made anyone feel small. He made people feel comfortable, included, and valued. But honestly, when I think about Dave, work was only a small part of what I remembered. I remember laughter, music, long dinners, concerts, comedy shows, good wine, random conversations that lasted for endless hours. And I remember Thanksgiving dinners at my house with both Dave and Dave. And this conversation was stretched late into the evenings and nobody wanted the night to end. And of course, I remember their legendary Christmas parties. Their home during the holidays was magical, warm, funny, musical, full of lights, stories, laughter, and always, of course, that good wine. It became one of those traditions you looked forward to all year long. I remember a man who was larger than life without ever needing to dominate a room. And I remember feeling lucky that one introduction after a presentation turned into a friendship that became part of our family.
My husband printed this in a big font and it said Juliana speaking. So let me speak. All right, let's see if I can do this. When my David first introduced me to Dave and Dave, we would call him Dave C and Dave R. Would be easier because Dave 1 and Dave 2 just didn't work for us. He immediately understood why everybody loved them. I still remember one of the first dinners we had together. He had his long ponytail with red highlights and curly mustache, and he opened the door with a glass of wine. Hey there, how are you doing? He made us ostrich stew. Somehow that perfectly captured who he was. Interesting, adventurous, unexpected, a little eclectic, and completely memorable. That was Dave. He approached life with curiosity and joy. And honestly, standing here today in church feels a little funny. Forgive me, Reverend. Dave probably would know about this church more than anyone else. He would know history, architecture, every stained glass window before we even walked through the door. He loved learning about everything and somehow always knew the most interesting details that nobody else noticed. One of the things Dave and I bonded over was our shared love of Wizard of Oz. It was one of his favorite books and one of mine too. And honestly, I'm now convinced that must be why their house was painted emerald green. It really was their own little emerald city. That was part of Dave's magic. He saw the world differently, with curiosity, imagination, humor, and wonder. I especially loved hearing him talk about travel. He and Dave loved exploring the world together, especially France, and Dave always knew the most interesting places, the hidden restaurants, the little shops, the perfect wines, the places no guidebook would ever tell you about. If anyone needed a recommendation, you asked Dave. And somehow, because it was Dave, one day we even found ourselves going with him to meet Jane Goodall. That was another thing about Dave. Life around him was never ordinary. There was always another adventure, another fascinating person to meet, and another story waiting to happen. And then there was music. Music was woven into Dave and Dave's life together. They truly made beautiful music together, literally and figuratively. Their partnership was filled with laughter, creativity, warmth, love, and many wonderful bottles of wine, and everyone around them could feel it. One of the things that that meant the most to me personally was with the relationship Dave had with our daughters, Dana and Alyssa. I can do this. They absolutely adored him. The three of them shared the love of books and stories, and whenever they talked about novels, you could see all of them just light up. And Dave was so thoughtful. He would give them gifts centered around women empowerment, cards featuring women who changed history, games created by women, books and stories meant to inspire them to believe they could make a difference. That kindness, that thoughtfulness, that encouragement, that was who Dave was at his core. Recently, David and I were talking, trying to think if we had heard anyone say anything negatively about Dave, and honestly, we couldn't think of a single example. People loved being around him. He was brilliant without arrogance, funny without cruelty, and thoughtful in ways, both big and small. We miss him terribly. We miss the laughter, the stories, the dinners, the music, the wine, and simply knowing he was there. But more than anything, we feel grateful. Grateful that we got to know him, grateful for friendship he gave us, and grateful for the love and joy he brought into our lives. We love you and miss you, and we always will. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So for as long as I could remember, my uncle was larger than life to me. When I was a kid, I was told basically he was a secret agent, a submarine commander, and that he only slept with his eyes open, so no one would sneak up on him. Naturally, every holiday, when he would spend the time sleeping over at my dad's house, I made it my personal mission to catch him sleeping. I never succeeded, which honestly only confirmed the story was true. What I do know, that is no matter where he lived, whether it was China, Japan, the Bay Area, or anywhere else in the world, he always made an effort to come spend time with us during the holidays, send gifts, and call on my birthday, or check in periodically. And as a kid, that made me feel incredibly loved, valued, and special. He would tell me his stories about his travels, the fascinating people he met, and the adventures he had, and honestly, I thought he knew everything about everything. And to this day, I still kind of do. He was like a walking encyclopedia, except for funnier and with better stories. Then in middle school, he married Dave. I remember feeling unbelievably sick the entire time. I couldn't believe that two people with the same name could get married. I was like, what? Dave still says that I was just overcome with emotion. But truthfully, I want to set the story straight. I was seasick, they got married on a boat, and I was seasick, so that's all it was. But one of the greatest gifts my uncle ever gave us was the example that he and Dave set together. He showed me what it was like to truly stand by your partner. Love them fully, and somehow still genuinely enjoy each other after all those years. And that's a rare thing and inspiring. He was always there to make me laugh, guide me when I had questions about life, love, or career, and make the people around him feel important. I'm going to miss him for the rest of my life. And Dave, I love you too. But I'm also kind of annoyed that I'm going to have to console you for the rest of my life. And I think that David would find that kind of hilarious. And so I love you, Uncle David. Thank you for everything.
I don't know how good I'm going to do at this. Thank you, everybody, for being here. David and I were two misfits that fit together. We met later in life. We met at a point where we both were transitioning into a new phase. Our life experiences, our way of dealing with things, and were polarly opposite, but they worked together. Each of us had our own unique strengths and weaknesses, and ours fit together. To say Dave was brilliant is a gross understatement. I honestly don't know how many languages he spoke, but along with Russian, Mandarin, Japanese, and many others, he could read and write the languages as well. He was an intellectual, and he was fascinated by everything and everyone. When he spoke to anyone, he listened and learned. I was surprised often when, after speaking to someone I had known for years, David would drop a fact or a piece of information I'd been completely unaware of. He was kind and generous. He cared about his friends, his family, his co-workers, our country, and the planet. He was genuinely concerned about the world that we're going to be leaving for the next few generations. A friend of David's, Drusilla Grubb, who worked with David during his time in the military, shared a story that I'd like to share with you. David Lars Chamberlain was one of the funniest and smartest men I've ever known, and I loved him dearly. More than 30 years ago, we had served in the military in intelligence and as intelligence analysts for NATO. He was a cryptographer, extremely knowledgeable, and highly trained in systems and technology. Normally, those guys were narrowly focused. Dave was different. He knew the tech, but he was also a widely read Renaissance man with a wicked sense of humor. In 1992, a Serbian man was killed at his son's wedding. Conflict broke out in the Balkans. Words like Bosnia, Montenegro, and Croatia were on the lips of commentators. For most of us, it sounded like the Klingons and Kardashians went to war with each other. Admirals had to be briefed, and David volunteered. With less than an hour to prepare, he stood in front of a huge map of Europe and gave a detailed report on who was doing what to whom. It was astonishing that Dave was able to put together so much current intelligence so fast, and he clearly knew exactly what he was talking about. When he finished, one of the admirals decided to try to look smart. Well, we can't understand what's going on over there without knowing the history of the region, and the admiral requested that they get back together the following day. Dave looked at the admiral for a long moment, took off his glasses, cleaned them slowly, put them back on. Taking a deep breath, he began, "Well, sir, in the 5th century BC," pointing at the map, over the course of 2 hours, he explained the Macedonian Wars, the Serbian Empire, the Bulgarian Empire, the Holy Romans, the Ottomans, the Balkan Wars, the Austro-Hungarian annexation, the brutal Axis occupation during World War II, and the internal fracturing of Yugoslavia during the Cold War. There wasn't a need to meet tomorrow. Drew closed with, "Fair winds and following seas, my dear friend. I miss you more than I can say. Love, Drusilla." David opened my world up in ways I could never have conceived of. We met so many incredible people, visited so many places, and had so many adventures. I still find it unbelievable. We also had quiet companionship that I will forever cherish and miss. For the better part of 28 years, we were together 24/7. We worked together at 3 different companies and then transitioned to working from home at the same time. My favorite part of the day was 5 p.m. when the day would be over. Weather permitting, we would sit out back, listen to the birds, watch butterflies and hummingbirds zoom past us while lizards would dance about us. David loved the view of Mount Diablo, and we would gaze at it and have a Prosecco together. After that, we would come inside and sit in the media room listening to music as we read for an hour or two before fixing dinner together. Through David's support and love, I was able to achieve so much more than I ever could have dreamed. David was and is the love of my life, and I'll miss him forever. And I hope he's here to know how much he is loved and missed.
Please stand as you're able for our opening prayer. We come together to seek meaning beyond our limited selves. We come together to seek a spirit that binds the scattered threads of our humanity, a thread that binds us together in sympathy, in understanding, in love, a thread that weaves the past, the present, and the future together and unites the fragments of our existence into a meaningful whole. My friends, we have gathered to honor David's memory, our memories of how he wove his thread into the tapestry of our lives. May our hearts and minds and spirits be filled with gratitude for him and for all those who give deep meaning to our lives. In the spirit of love and joy, may a divine presence grace us this day. Amen. Please be seated. Going to share with you a poem written by the Celtic poet John O'Donoghue on the death of the beloved. Though we need to weep your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn, brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark, a further adventure of color. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you unfolded in your gaze quickened in the joy of its being. You placed smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days here were brief, your spirit was alive, awake, complete. We look towards each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, and as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face, smiling back at us from within everything to which we bring our best refinement. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love until we see your beautiful face again in that land where there is no more separation, where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again. I'd like to begin by thanking our wonderful speakers for bringing David's presence into the room. I feel it. I feel that he is here. And David Rounsley, I want to thank you for bringing him into our lives. I want to thank you for trusting St. Paul's. Not an easy thing to do as a gay man, to cold call a church and ask for a funeral for the beloved. I have learned so much from you, and I thank you for your courage and for your love and your trust. You know, you may have heard that we Christians have some kind of funny beliefs about life and death. Unfortunately, this can lead to a bizarre kind of memorial where everybody's happy. Hooray, they're with Jesus. No more tears. Well, that's not how it works, is it? This is what I love about the poem that I just read. It is really dense, and I encourage you to take home your bulletin and keep working with it. But that first line resonates with me so much. We need to weep your loss. We need to grieve. And it's a different kind of grief. It's not just grief for the person who has died, but it is also, in a way, for ourselves. There's a grief counselor, Alan Wolfelt, who calls it the profound experience of being understood, known and connected in the way that only that person could offer. Losing someone in death forever changes our being. It changes our soul. And although I do talk a lot about good news in the pulpit, the bad news is that grief is not optional. And how I wish it were for all of you. But even the Christian scripture tells us that Jesus himself, this all-knowing, God-connected being on earth, the one who in theory knew everything about everything, wept at the death of his friend Lazarus. Even though he could see the joy and the good news and the resurrection on the other side, he stopped and he grieved. So weep we must. I can only imagine that I'm preaching to the choir here. You have all been weeping. You have all been grieving. And it will continue. The weeping doesn't stop because it's been a year since David died. It doesn't stop because you finally cleared out a closet. It doesn't stop because, for Pete's sake, I'm in the freezer aisle right now, and why am I suddenly missing David? When love is so fierce, the grief is fierce too. A love this strong can only be balanced by the kind of grief that takes us. And grief does not stop because you've had a funeral. It doesn't stop because you've had some kind of memorial. But there is something that happens today. There is something that happens when we gather as a community around someone who has died. In some way, we are transformed, and then in some way, we go out into the world. And it's hard to know exactly what that is. It's not exactly an end. It's not exactly a beginning either. The best way that I can describe it is that it's a commissioning. It's a time when the people who loved David the most gather around his loss to grieve. And in this gathering, make a commitment just as fierce as our grief to continue to love. To continue that in our sadness and despair, it will not have the last word. That even though it's hard to grieve someone we loved, we will love them anyway. And we will love one another anyway. That's something that we Christians believe. That love is more powerful than death. And what happens in that is mysterious. It's mysterious to us. But the commitment that you all make here today, that I invite you to do, is to love anyway. Love as hard and fiercely and beautifully and wholly as David did. He has taught you something wonderful, and in carrying forward his memory, in your love for one another, he will live forever. Amen. I'd like to invite you to place your hand over your heart as we say this prayer for this gathered community, as we commission one another to the work of love. Trusting in the loving wisdom of the mysteries beyond ourselves, we call forth our pain and our grief. We bow to it, knowing that it is a sign of our deep love. We call forth our deepest compassion for one another, and we bow to it, knowing that compassion is a powerful healer. We call forth our joy, bowing to it because we know that the thread of David's life has forever changed us, and his memory will bring us comfort in the coming days. My friends, please stand as you're able, and join me as we send David to this final journey that awaits him and commit his memory to our hearts. Please follow along in your bulletin. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember you. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember you. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember you. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of the summer, we will remember you. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember you. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember you. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember you. When we are lost and sick at heart, When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember you. For as long as we live, you too shall live, for you are a part of us, and we will always remember. My friends, this concludes our memorial for David Chamberlain. Here at St. Paul's, we have a custom that we end memorials by ringing our bell once for every year of life. The bell will start ringing. David and I will process out. He looks forward to receiving you at his home. The address is printed in your bulletin.